Michael, not to put you on the spot, but what if you can just give us like your top 3 to 4 areas that you need to have addressed in an LOI, what would those top 3 to 4 areas be?
I would say the value, not the valuation, but what the valuation was based on. So if they're giving you a valuation of $50 million and it's say subject to what? And very often it's, well, subject to making sure that you hit your 2020 numbers. That's a very different valuation than $50 million subject to confirming that your trailing 12 months numbers that you've already produced, are accurate. One you know with certainty, the other you really don't know. So that subject, we hate ones that just have a valuation and it's not what was it based on. It just making sure that there's no miscommunication. That would be number 1. Number 2 is, and just because it takes up so much time, is working capital. Very often they don't have enough information, but at least have the methodology that you're going to be using, the equation, maybe an example in the back, an exhibit that lists out working capital. And the third that we like, that I alluded to, is what's the path to closing, and making sure that everyone is motivated. The most important thing that is likelihood of closing, and we want to make sure that that likelihood of closing is high and that they're very motivated to move this transaction along in the time that we're allowing them.
Simon, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are the top 3 areas that need to be negotiated in an LOI?
Yes, I think understanding the basis of the valuation is key, and we would look to do that as well. Probably less concerned around normalized working capital for reasons I've previously mentioned. I think the buyer needs to have a lot more information for that. I think understanding the funding of the buyer. Do they need to go out to external parties? Do they need to go out to banks, debt funds to raise the money to help them do the deal? Because we know that's just going to add a lot of time into the process. Now, I'm sure the guys will say we would already have covered that up front. We would already know their funding structure and have had those discussions. But I think it's still good to just have clarity of that and what they've been able to achieve with funders and whether they've got, investment committee approval to support that. Less important for a seller, but obviously the buyer will probably want to have exclusivity in there and know that there's, they might even want a cost underwrite to know that, and we as a seller side will always try and reject that because you want the buyer to be on hook and, spending real money and, properly focusing on the issues rather than just having a fishing trip paid for him. But they're probably the main areas that I would see.
Bill, same question over to you. Top 3 or 4 areas that you need to have addressed in an LOI.
Sure, I agree with Michael and Simon. Those are all great points, and I'm probably touching on pretty much what they've covered. But obviously look at the price, but not just the price, the total deal value. What are the components? What is the structure of that? How much cash at closing, earn out, note, stock, et cetera? If the deal does have quite a bit of structure, and if we're being surprised, if we were told it was going to be substantially all cash at close, and then we get an LOI with all kinds of structuring, well, what is the timing? How long does it take to get that money back? I look to see if they are slipping in a financing contingency, and I've had this happen. I'm sure the guys have had this happen where in the IOI, they do not put a financing contingency. You get the letter of intent and they slip that in there, which is always puzzling to me when you talk to a big private equity firm and they've got $500 million under management. Why do they need a financing contingency for a $40 million transaction? And I'll also look at if the executives or owners are staying. Do we have any language on employment contracts, any non-compete? And are they tying any of the dollars to a non-compete? Because that might shift those proceeds from long-term capital gains to an income tax rate.
Great point, guys.